From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello from me, Alison Mitchell, and welcome to a new series of Stumped here on All India Radio. Each week we'll be seeking out the topical, the controversial, the weird and the wonderful stories that only the great game of cricket can provide. Now, if you listen to the first series, you'll know I have two trusty all-rounders to keep me company every week. Delivering line and length from Sydney is Jim Maxwell, cricket commentator for ABC Radio in Australia, and serving up some spin from All India Radio in Bangalore. On his Stumped debut, a very warm welcome to Charu Sharma.
Hey Alison, thanks so much. Wonderful listening to you, and thank you for accepting me on board. I do look forward to our weekly chat, and of course a big hi to Maestro Maxwell from Down Under.
Hello to you, Jim. How are you doing? Very careless of you to lose the Ashes over the summer. Have you recovered?
Oh, yes, we're in Australasian week now because of the Rugby World Cup. It's nice to hear Charu's voice. We met up in Sri Lanka when Australia was last there. Yes, I think that was just one of those unfortunate circumstances that came about in Australian cricket, and we're trying to move on because we've got New Zealand to deal with over in Britain at the moment, coming up at Twickenham, and then next week in Brisbane when the Trans-Tasman series gets underway.
A double New Zealand whammy. Well, it's great that we've got you both with us again. Now, it's not every day that you get to interview two of the game's all-time greats, but that's exactly what we've managed to do in order to get this new series of Stumped up and running with a bang. Australia's Shane Warne and India's Sachin Tendulkar are teaming up in a quest to help cricket conquer America, and they've been telling me all about it. Warne's Warriors and Sachin's Blasters will contest 3 all-star matches at baseball stadiums in New York, Houston and Los Angeles in November. Now, that sounds pretty chilly to me in that climate. The teams, though, are packed full of household names, and Warne says the matches can help make cricket a truly global sport.
The major reason how this came about was a couple of years ago when that Lord's 200 game was on, the MCC versus rest of the world, when myself and Sachin were named as captain, and we sold basically 30,000 tickets out in an hour. We thought that it's really important that cricket is a major part of the community all around the world and is an international sport. We know the Americans were passionate about it, and we said, why don't we just recreate that game and put it on in the States and see how it goes. We've signed 28 players, and we've committed 15 games over the next 3 years, not all in America. We're starting with America because we just want to test the water there. We know there's a lot of expats plus the Americans there. We thought it'd be quite cool to play cricket in some iconic stadiums. So we're giving it a go in America. In a couple of weeks we play our first game. We wanted to take it to people that have never had an opportunity to see some of their heroes play live. That's the model, and we thought, let's do it. So Sachin and I have sort of are hosting everyone and putting it on and staging these 3 games in America. And we hope people buy tickets. Otherwise the house could be for sale.
And the certainty, of course, is that you will be up against Sachin in the opposite team. So it's Sachin's Blasters against Warne's Warriors. Are you looking forward to facing him again? Because you didn't have the greatest record against him during your career, did you?
No, he used to smack me all out the park, so I'm not really looking forward to that. I think I managed to get him out a few times, but not enough. So November 7, myself and Sachin will walk out to a drop-in pitch that we've been growing in Illinois at Citi Field in New York and tossing a coin to play a 2020 match, which is pretty, when you say it like that, it's pretty outrageous, really. Look, I just think it's fantastic. Iconic players playing iconic baseball stadiums in America. I think the capacity, is around 50,000 at each stadium. So we think if we can get that somewhere around 30-odd plus thousand at each venue, we think that's been a huge success.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, that's Shane Warne. Jim, let me give you a few numbers. According to the US Cricket Association, there are 32,000 registered players in America. That's in contrast with Australia, where 1.2 million play the game. And it's a big ask, but if anyone can crack America, do you think Warne and Tendulkar can?
I think they got more chance than the ICC, as it were, and I hope this was a huge success. Frankly, I would like to believe that within a decade, the ICC would stage the T20 World Championship in Canada and the United States. That's what I'd be looking to do if they really want to expand the game. And, most Americans just don't understand it. But once they see the continuity of action in the T20 game, unlike the more sort of staid atmosphere, perhaps comparatively at a test match, I'm sure they'll love it. So let's get the 17 million people who participate in baseball and softball in America interested in another bat and ball game. I reckon this is a wonderful opportunity for cricket.
Oh, a World T20 in Canada and the US would be quite a spectacle. Cherry, what do you reckon? I mean, will it be just be expats who turn out to watch the All-Stars, or can they really attract Americans? Is cricket one sport too many where, soccer, as it's known, has struggled to win over a public who just seem obsessed by baseball, basketball and American football?
Well, all of what you mentioned, Alison, but A+ for effort, attempting to take cricket to a new high in the US, and the environment may be right now because the game has evolved in this T20 format, which is far more acceptable. Even the most ADD can probably have a good look at it. But, for instance, I mean, they've been trying with football and throwing massive resources at it, which they call soccer, for so many years. And even then, it has been difficult to grow strong roots in the US. I mean, imagine, I'd like to ask Jim this. What if the biggest stars of US baseball came and played a sort of an all-stars set of games in Australia? Do you think baseball would grow strong roots quickly?
Well, they did at the Sydney Cricket Ground last year. We had the start of the Major League Baseball season played on the ground with a couple of matches. And the crowds were huge. The television audience was over 150 million. So America has made its mark with its national game in Australia. I think we need to reciprocate.
There could be some big hitting as well. If you think of the shape of baseball stadiums, there could be some short boundaries. Perhaps the biggest factor that is in favour of the All-Stars project is the chance to revive the famous rivalry between Warne and Tendulkar. We've heard Shane Warne there talking about facing his nemesis. How much is Tendulkar then looking forward to locking horns with his old adversary?
It'll be fun. We've had some amazing matches against each other, and not just Warne and me, but there are many rivalries in the past 15 years that international cricket has seen, and those rivalries are going to be gently reignited, I believe.
And what will it be like for you when you go to New York? Have you spent much time out there before? Well, I just wonder what sort of reaction you might get there, whether it's the same as you get in India or more like when you're in England.
I think it will be slightly different compared to India, because India is absolutely, crazy about cricket, and they love their cricket. For Americans to get there, it's going to take a while, but I see a lot of promise there, because I have a lot of friends in America who've actually in the 90s went there to study, and they went on to become big successful doctors and lawyers and all those kind of things, and they did not come back to India. When they went to America, they had no idea about baseball or basketball. But now they follow baseball and basketball, and thanks to all their American friends who took them to the stadiums to watch all these, matches. And maybe I reckon, it's time for those guys to reciprocate things. So, I'm looking forward to this, and more so with Americans in the stands.
And Sachin, it's been, 2 years since you played your last test match. Are you missing international cricket at all, or is this something that could fill a gap?
No, I'm not missing, to be honest. Yes, when I played last year at Lord's, I thoroughly enjoyed playing there. And but I know that you can play 2-3 matches here and there, exhibition games, but then to get back to serious competitive international cricket and play for months at a stretch is not easy. It's a big challenge, and I don't think my body would be able to take that load.
Do you see your future as playing in these sorts of tournaments, or do you have aspirations to either move into coaching or that sort of area?
At this point of time, I'm happy where I am. There are a lot of other commitments. There are a lot of other things that I'm involved in, and I'm pretty much enjoying where I am. So I don't see myself, at least in the near future, engaging myself into all those activities.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, that's Sachin Tendulkar talking about life after retirement. Charu, he's got no plans to go into coaching or anything just yet, but I imagine in retirement he's still just as much of an idol in India as he always was.
Oh, he is for sure, and should remain India's biggest sporting idol for many years to come. As much for his achievements, of course, as for his very studied ability to keep clear of controversies, and that's important in our part of the world. You mentioned coaching, and just very quickly, the reason many of the big players, top players in India, did not earlier opt for coaching is because, very simply, there wasn't much money in it. Now there is, but there's another impediment, and that's, of course, not being able to completely influence a game. So then you lose your equity as a player just because you can't really guarantee the result of a game. You might lose, and then people say, well, Tendulkar, what kind of a coach is he? So I think that will be much later, if at all. I just wish, on behalf of millions of Indians, that he would use the pedestal that he's on to effect serious change in India. The country needs him to do bigger things, not just in the world of sport, but perhaps for more social upliftment. So, Sachin, go for it.
So Sachin into politics, perhaps. You can hear more from Shane Warne and Sachin Tendulkar on our website, bbcworldservice.com/stumped. And as part of their efforts to globalise the game, they're both in favour of seeing T20 cricket become an Olympic sport. And the ICC are meeting with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, next month to explore the possibilities. That's the phrase they're using. And what do you both think about that, Jim?
I think it'd be a wonderful achievement if they could pull it off, and I know that the IOC would love the money that would come out of the subcontinent because they don't get too much at the moment. There's very little Olympic sport from that part of the world, but there are lots of problems ahead to try and make it work. The T20 game over the 10, 14 days of the Olympic program, the issues with the World Anti-Doping Agency, India. They're not all that keen on some aspects of that. They say it's an invasion of privacy and against its ethics code. It's the format is the big problem, I reckon. You'd probably have to have 6-a-side matches, something like that. And then what would you do with the West Indies? There'd be Trinidad and Barbados. There'd be Great Britain. So there are many structural issues. But if money is at the heart of all of this, one would love the others, as it were, then something may happen. But I think it'll take a long while for it to come off.
Well, it would mean that governments would pump money into a sport that they might not otherwise have cared about. Chara, what do you reckon to it all?
Well, the Indian cricket firmament is not exactly holding its breath for the government to pump any more money into it.
Well, not into
the
India,
Indians,
no.
of course, the Indians will be delighted, of course, if cricket were to be a part of the Olympics. But, the Olympics were meant to be the pinnacle of sport, and that exalted status is not true for sports which have clearly outgrown, if I can use that term, the Olympics, by becoming huge, lucrative professional sports. So Olympic glory just doesn't mean the same thing. It doesn't have the same worth for, say, an NBA star, an EPL star, an IPL star, unlike for, say, swimmers or a volleyball player or an archer for whom it's glory of the Olympics or bust. So it'll be good for the game if it gets there, but also I must add that, it's sadly not yet a global enough game, if you know what I mean. There are many others which are far more popular in other parts of the world or bigger parts of the world which are in line waiting for an Olympic spot.
I was going to say, is this one of the points, though, Charon, that by having it in the Olympics, it might actually become more global? Or is it a bit of a charm offensive by the ICC, who on one hand have reduced the 50-over World Cup, and on the other hand saying, well, do you know what, we're exploring putting cricket into the Olympics?
Well, I think by establishing the T20 format, the format's just right. The Olympics can, in a span of, say, 2.5 weeks, conduct a fabulous tournament. And yes, it will, I suppose, popularize the game in other countries where the game doesn't exist at all. But my point was the fact that there are other sports which are popular in many more countries as a number, which are waiting in line. So perhaps those do need to, maintain the position in the line before cricket leapfrogs, even though it will probably bring much more money to the Olympic movement, as Jim said.
Yeah, there were sports like squash, karate that missed out, I think, in the last round of sports, where golf made it into the Olympics. I mean, rugby sevens does get on well at the Olympics as a sport where, the biggest names in the game don't play that format. It's a sevens tournament. It's not the full 15s. I wonder whether cricket could perhaps, when there's talk that they might consider indoor cricket, they could follow the pattern of football where there's a men's under-23 tournament, but there's a women's tournament which doesn't have any sort of age bracket. That might help in terms of scheduling or just making it a different sort of pinnacle for that sport. But it's going to be fascinating to see if something happens from that. We'll move on in a moment, but before we do, I don't know whether you've seen, but going back to the Cricket All-Stars, All-Stars, their website has a comprehensive section for any Americans who want to learn the rules of cricket, or the laws as they are. They've got a whole series of diagrams and graphics that explain field positions, the LBW law, and what all the umpire signals mean. It's pretty handy, but possibly a little bit time-consuming to decipher, in our opinion. So for a quick, infallible guide to the laws of the game, we've asked former England all-rounder Andrew Flintoff.
You have two sides, one out in the field and one in. Each man decides that in goes out, and when he's out, the next man comes in until he's out. When they're all out, the side that's out comes in. Sometimes they are men, still in, but not out. Umpires decide when the men who are in are out. Depending on the weather and light, the umpires can also send everybody in, no matter whether they're in or out. When both sides have been in and all the men are out, the game is finished.
Is that going to help anybody?
That's good fun. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that description. But yes, I'm sure there's a way. If you've got personalities like Warne and Tendulkar with their all-stars, you got a chance of cracking the market. So you got to wish them all the best. They really want to break into America.
Let's hope that any Americans might find the game of cricket a little easier to decipher than that poem. If you're still baffled, keep listening to Stumped and we'll demystify the great game for you. Thanks to all three players for helping us launch the second series of Stumped: Shane Warne, Andrew Flintoff and Sachin Tendulkar.
Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks to my co-hosts Jim Maxwell of the ABC and All India Radio's very own Charu Sharma. There's much more from all of us on the podcast. Head to bbcworldservice.com/stumped to listen and download. And if you want to get in touch, we're on Twitter as well, at BBC Stumped. Join us again next week, same time, same place. Bye for now.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.